Oh, without a doubt, if you are not an optimistic person, do not choose farming as an occupation.
Hey, Islanders, and welcome to episode 144 of the Camano Voice. Today I speak with the founders of Hazel Blue Acres. Please welcome Karen and Spencer Fuentas.
Hi, I'm Brandon Erickson, and you're listening to the Camano Voice podcast, where I interview local business owners, comedians, singers, and more. I dive into their backstory to find out how they got where they are, what are some of the tips for you to do the same, and find out where they are going. Tune in every week as I interview more of the people you see every day.
Hey, Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice, where we release a new episode every Tuesday. How is your guys' week going? Hope things are going well. I feel like this week has been, maybe over the last few weeks, has been like a little heavy. There's just been some friends and some stuff that's gone on, and then families, internal, not family, but like stuff to our family that's happened, and it's just, like you're a little bit like down. And I try not to be that for the, my team, my community, stuff like that. So I do apologize that I'm a little bit down today. But all that being said, thankfully I recorded this podcast well before all of this. So don't worry, I was not sad and depressed in that as well. So anyways, I try not to be down, but it's just been kind of a rough couple weeks. So that's been our life. Hope your week is doing better than that. And then the other thing I want to mention is, if you aren't already, be sure to follow me on the Camano Voice on the Insta or the IG, Instagram, that thing. I don't know what the kids call it these days, because kids aren't on it, I guess. Anyways, follow me on that at the Camano Voice. I'll have a link to it in my show notes just for you guys to be able to follow me there. But I'm trying to do like a little mini challenge for myself, and so I'm going to try and post at least 3 times a week for the next month. So for 4 weeks, 3 posts, and those posts aren't going to necessarily be post like that's going to be like stories, and they're going to be very random because I'm just trying to do 3 things. So they're going to be all over the place. And spoiler alert, I did my first one last night, and it was really weird. So be sure to follow me there for more weird stuff. All right, here we go. So today I am interviewing Karen and Spencer Fuentas, who are the founders of Hazel Blue Acres Blueberry Farm. And they are, it was great listening to them and hearing them and speaking with them. Farmers are always inspiring to me because of, I alluded to it in the intro of this podcast, but they have to work so hard to accomplish what they're doing. And then most of what they do, they don't have control over the other part of it, like the weather, the markets, insects, anything. Like anything can affect them very negatively, and yet they have to keep pushing forward, and they have to do this really hard work and continue to do it day in and day out with just that optimistic kind of out view. And so that's why I pulled that line out from Spencer, because I thought that was so great. I was like, yeah, that I think sums up being a farmer. Like, you have to be a constant optimist if you're a farmer. And so I had a great time talking with them. They go into how they ended up starting the farm, and how they had no experience at the beginning, and how they just continued to grow it from there. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Karen and Spencer Fuentas. Hey, Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice. Today I'm here with the founders of Hazel Blue Acres. Welcome to the podcast, Karen and Spencer Fuentas.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. So before we get started, tell us a little bit about Karen and Spencer.
Well, we have the farm that Spencer grew up on.
Okay.
And it's changed quite a bit over the years. It started as a dairy farm. We both grew up on dairy farms. I grew up on Fur Island.
Okay.
Up near Conway. And he grew up right there on the Stillaguamish.
Nice. So Spencer, growing up, was that something you were ever thinking about, like keeping the farm?
I think that growing up, on a dairy farm was one of the greatest ways to grow up there was, especially in that particular location. End of a dead-end road, surrounded by the river, a lot of freedom in that era. And, I guess I thought that I would be a farmer for quite a while. And then when I realized that there was life other than farming, when I started going to college and I was going to college up at Sketch Valley College I was taking some ag classes there and with the thought of becoming a farmer, but life changed.
Yeah. Okay.
And then it changed back.
There and back again. Very cool. So, what was it for Spencer then? For growing up there, did you have siblings? A lot of siblings?
I did. I had. There was a family of 5 children with 3 brothers and 1 sister, and I'm the second oldest. So, a fair amount of responsibility. Learned to drive a tractor practically as soon as I could walk, and working on equipment, doing all those farming kind of things that it's very easy for me to take for granted because they were just part of my life right from the beginning. And as I grew away from it, I realized it was probably a pretty special way to grow up.
Yeah.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah. So for you, Karen, then growing up, did you have a lot of siblings on the farm?
Yes, I'm one of 5 also.
Okay.
2 brothers and 2 sisters.
Okay.
2 older than me and 2 younger. So.
Oh wow, you were right in the middle.
Yeah. We had all of our jobs on the farm. We had a Jersey farm, and but maybe not. I didn't have as much responsibility as maybe he did there. But we all had our role to play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. And for you growing up, you said you were on Fur Island. How was that growing up for you then?
It was a pretty wonderful childhood as well. I mostly had both parents at home and got to be outside a lot. And well, I grew up along the Skagit River, so him along the Stillaguamish and me. So we had very similar beginnings, I'd say.
Yeah. Very cool. So then, as you guys were growing up, was it something? I know, Spencer, we were just talking about you went to college for ag and stuff, but for Karen, was that something you were interested in that you wanted to continue on, or were you, as you were getting older, were you thinking, I would really want to do something else? Or?
I had other plans. I always was interested in farming. I also worked away from my parents' farm for a farm on Fur Island in the berries, not blueberries, but raspberries and strawberries. For Shirley and Nolan Lee were their names, and that was a great summer job for me. But I was going to college with, I guess my first goal in college then was working toward going to seminary to be a pastor.
Really? Okay.
And then I went a little different direction from that and had some different jobs, but I'm a cooking school dropout. I have a Bachelor of Arts in Biblical Studies, but then I finally got my degree to be an elementary teacher at Western.
Got it. Okay. So, did you end up teaching elementary then?
Yeah, for a while here in Camano.
Oh, really?
The first year that Elder Bay Elementary was open,
wow.
I was a 3rd grade teacher there.
Okay.
And that's the same year that I met Spencer on a blind date.
Okay. Nice. How was the first date? Because now knowing your guys' background, as you guys were probably explaining background and stuff, what was that like for you guys?
I enjoyed it. It was in Stanwood. We met. A mutual friend set us up. And we were at the Veracruz Mexican restaurant that used to be there.
Yes.
Downtown. And I liked him right away. But she knew we had similar interests and things in common.
Okay.
He had something he wants to say about it, too.
We were set up by a friend from Sylvana that grew up on a dairy farm, and there was a whole lot of those dairy farm connections.
And my brother set her up with her husband.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so doing returning the favor.
Back to the school thing. I don't have all of the credentials that Karen has. My path diverged somewhere there in my second year of going to Skagit. And I had taken a dairy science class and soils and horticulture, and all those things were interesting. And I liked school a lot. The learning of things, and I was taking calculus and other stuff. And the learning was great, but the sitting in a classroom wasn't so much. And I think I went off and became a commercial fisherman in that second year there. I wanted to go to Alaska, and a friend of my brother's said, get a job on a fishing boat and you can go to Alaska for free. And I said, really? I had no clue whatsoever. So I beat the docks and asked for a job going to Alaska. And, the first boat that hired me with that, I had a job offered to fish on a boat that didn't go to Alaska. And I said, nope, I'm going to Alaska. And I took a job, and that was, I believe, the summer of '86. And I've been to Alaska every year since.
Okay.
I still own a fishing boat there.
Wow.
But that's how I diverged from my college and farming path, and realized that I fell in love with the being outside and on the water and catching fish and that stuff. So the aside that we went down there, I knew Karen's brothers, cousins and brother-in-law, all for a number of years before I ever met her.
Wow.
I said, why didn't you think of this before, you guys? But, oh well, that's how life unfolds.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. And then you didn't have to work to get the approval because you're like, no, we are no.
That's right.
So in that then, when you what was your fascination with Alaska? Was there something like as a kid or something that kind of drew you that way, or were you just always looking that way?
I think that there was always an outdoorsy kind of element to that. Some hunting and fishing and trapping and reading in that era, growing up in the 70s. I mean, I subscribed to Outdoor Life and Fur Fish Game, and my great uncle would pass on his Alaska magazines to me, and so I would read them from cover to cover multiple times, and just was fascinated with that life, and not ever realizing anything about the fishing, but the frontier life.
Yeah.
And Alaska was kind of enticing, and so I wanted to go to Alaska, and had for quite a while, and it was a kind of a fluke mention of this or that, and hey, go get a job and you can go for free. And one thing led to another.
Nice.
And here I am.
And then when I met him, I was used to the idea of traveling, for part of the year for like my brothers, my cousins, and my brother-in-law that he mentioned, because sometimes people will say, oh, especially when we're first married, isn't that awful? I mean, he's gone for months at a time, this kind of thing, but it wasn't a foreign idea to me, and I don't enjoy having him leave, but I was used to the idea.
Yeah. Well, and I think everyone has their different ideas everyone has their ideas of relationships, things like that, but once you start getting into the groove of things, like I worked swing shift for a while, and that's a weird life to live, because you're like seeing your spouse or family like half the day, but it's during the time that they're in the middle of their stuff.
Yeah.
So you never get like relaxing time with them. But like eventually you get into the groove and you're just like, okay, this is kind of what we do.
Yeah, I agree.
So, and I think, from farming and my experience of just talking with other farmers and stuff, like it's already like it's a hard life. It's not something you just do because you're gonna make money, or like it's a passion.
Right.
So you guys are already kind of used to hard work and difficult situations and all that. So and you mentioned in there, you said do you own a boat, or do you just go up with the same group that you've been fishing with?
No, I have owned a boat, actually. I bought my first boat 4 years after I started crewing on a boat up there, and then and purchased my Bristol Bay boat in 1993.
Okay.
And have fished there ever since. Ran a boat. I think I purchased it in the fall of '92 and have run a boat every year since 1993. So,
wow.
And part of that's what's the evolution of the fishing and the farming. I would go up fishing, and then I would come home and be in my mom and brother and sister that were still dairy farming. In their eyes, I was footloose and readily available to work on the farm, whatever needed to be fixed. I was a trained source of labor, and so I did. I came back every year and I worked on the farm and I helped out. And I would things would break and I'd come home and fix them because I've always had a knack for fixing stuff that's broken. And that came in handy. So I never ever lost touch with the farm, or there's never been a year where I wasn't involved in it. So then, the fishing enabled me so that when my mom was gonna retire and sell out, and the one brother that I had that had continued in dairy farming had moved to Wisconsin and bought his own farm there.
Oh, okay.
So my other siblings were either not interested at the time or not able to buy, the farm. So I think that was in 1998. I purchased the farm from my mom.
That was before we met.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
okay.
before we had met, yeah. And then, that began plotting and planning.
Yeah. So what was it for you then that kind of changed your focus from keeping at a dairy farm to moving to berries?
I had wanted to plant. I wanted to plant blueberries for a long time.
Okay.
Just because I like them.
Yeah.
I mean, there's and then there's the whole concept of having a business plan and an idea of all of the structure of things before you start on any venture.
Yeah.
We've been to
A lot of planning
numerous
and information meetings.
seminars, classes, and they talk about that. I started just basically with a passion.
Okay.
And knew that I liked blueberries, so why shouldn't everyone else?
Yeah.
So there was that, and we had some blueberries growing up on the farm plants, and I knew they would grow there in the soil and everything, and so there was a combination of that, and the other crop we grow is our hazelnuts that we planted, and we don't commonly referred to as filberts here, but they're the same thing. Hazelnuts is a European name for filberts. But,
I didn't know that.
And so they were the two things that I had wanted to plant. And once I owned the farm, my mom couldn't say no.
And I said I would go along with it.
Okay.
Which was pretty crucial.
Kind of a big deal.
Yeah. So, I met Karen in 2001.
2000.
Oh, yeah, it was in 2000, and we got married in 2001.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So,
So for you then, Karen, you had grown up on a dairy farm. You'd kind of been teaching and doing other stuff. As this was all coming about, was that something where did you continue teaching after this, or were you looking at this is going to be the main thing that we're going to do now?
After we got married, I had a non-continuing position, a year-long position out there. And so then I was looking at the next year what that would look like, and we were getting married that summer, and so I started substitute teaching because I didn't want to start in a new school, a new grade, a new marriage, everything at the same time. So I really enjoyed subbing.
Yeah.
That was a nice way to go, one place one day and switch it up the next day, that kind of thing. And I kept doing that for a couple of years once we were married. And then once we had our oldest child, then I didn't substitute anymore for a while. Mm-hmm. And then I did a little bit several years ago, or years later, and then now the farm takes up plenty of time. And that's not something that I have time to do right now.
Yeah. So you guys were just kind of getting the farm going then, and then you had your first kid. What was it like for you guys then? Was the farm still very much like just something that was kind of a side thing that you guys were doing on the side as well? What was it kind of like back then?
I'd say on the side for a couple of years, when you say corn and grass for hay was what was going on.
Yeah, we grow other crops too, and so we have having a background in dairy farming, and this goes back to the starting with a passion rather than a plan. The foibles, the pitfalls,
The learning curve.
having a background in dairy farm does not make you a blueberry farmer. I get 100%. We knew how to grow, forage for cow feed, that kind of thing. I mean, I grew up doing that. Perennial crops are a different animal completely.
Yeah.
Different thing. And so it was definitely a side thing. And we started out with, we ordered the plants in 2006. I'd gone to some blueberry growing classes in 2004 and 2005. Went to one down at Corvallis, Oregon State University, that was a couple days, that was specifically organic blueberries. And so these plants, we ordered them, and they came in 1 gallon pots, and they were just little tiny plants that weren't going to produce berries for the first 3 years. You would strip the blossoms to get the plants to grow, and then that first year, so that was this started in 2004.
Okay.
The idea.
We had 2 little ones then.
Ordered the plants in 2006. We got 13,000 blueberry plants in September of 2008. Planted them. They grow for. There was a little minor flood disaster in there in the interim that caused more work. But you put the plants in the ground, and then don't harvest anything until 2011. So there's a lot of upfront costs that you're not recouping. So I'm continuing to fish, and I did some carpentry jobs on the side. I mean, there's all these things that you have to do to still have a living.
Yeah.
And, keep farming and doing all that work.
Yeah.
And that first year we harvested, was it about 1,800 pounds?
Sounds right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we picked these bushes that were barely knee high or a little more. You go out and that seems like maybe a lot, but it was a lot of work just to get a very small amount. I mean, we've had 1,800 pound days now.
Okay.
Where in one day.
Wow.
With hand picking, and more than that probably, maybe double that in a day.
And that first year, it was a crew that we had of some youth, some neighbors, some adults. It was not a U-pick.
Yeah.
We had the goal of doing U-pick eventually, but that was just checking out what they were going to do and making sure we got them picked, kind of a thing that year.
Yeah. But there's the difference between growing up in a dairy farm where the milk truck shows up. You produce a product.
Yep.
The milk truck shows up and hauls it away in bulk, and it's gone.
Yep.
And somebody else is doing the marketing, the processing, holding it, storing it, all of those things. So it was a good thing that that first year we only picked 1,800 pounds.
Right. Definitely.
Because and as in subsequent years, the growth was just gradual.
Yep.
And we have developed markets and marketing skills.
Yes.
That we never knew we had, and maybe.
And we have room for a lot more growth in that area.
Learn to build a website, learn to do all kinds of things. And so that taking passion and using that as energy to get started is great, but the follow through was the key thing, because as a team, I mean, I wouldn't have ever been able to do it without Karen.
Yeah.
So,
That's awesome.
And I would say that the part that I played while he's in Alaska, I wouldn't have been able to do very well without his farmer mom and my farmer dad coming alongside us and encouraging and helping, and we've had a lot of assistance in the whole project along the way. Don't you agree?
Oh, definitely.
Just a few things falling in the background. It's fine. So I think what's fascinating to me, I've been doing a lot of with podcasting and then researching in business and stuff like that. Like the fundamentals of farming are fascinating to me, because I think the amount of blood, sweat, and tears that goes into getting a farm up and going, and doing all of that work is so countercultural to what we live in today. Of, hey, I could throw this product out and then maybe it'll explode and go viral and it explodes, or it'll flop and then I just try it again. But there's no this sustained effort in one direction. It's running a million directions at once and hope that one of those things goes. So
the work to get it to where you're at today is just, it's always inspiring to me to like talk to farmers and just, the passion that you guys have and the ability to continue to see what you want it to be. But you're starting with raw land, raw dirt, not even a blueberry, no blueberry plants to start with, and then building into that. So do you think for you guys, I know it was a passion project, but then in that, what is it that just kept you guys going as you hit those roadblocks and things like that?
Oh, without a doubt, if you are not an optimistic person, do not choose farming as an occupation. Whether it's a perennial crop that you're going to plant and invest a substantial amount of money in and not see any return for 7 to 10 years, where the payoff point, or even going out and planting beans, peas, corn, leafy greens, root vegetables, squash, all those things you put in the soil, and then you hope and pray for rain at the right time or sun at the right time. And you have a season at the very minimum, and there are crops that are 2-year crops that you hope to not have flooded out. And
yeah.
So it's like going to the casino over and over again every year, and you hope that the crop will produce, and then beyond that, as a farmer, most farmers, the vast majority, have no control over the price that they receive. So they hope for a yield, something to sell, and then you hope and pray for a price. So there's so many things that farmers have no control over, whether it be market conditions, weather, all of those things, that if you are not an eternal optimist, you would never make it as a farmer.
Oh, yeah. What about for you, Karen? What were things that helped you keep pushing through?
Well, with the blueberries, you can pretty much count on another crop coming, so you better get ready for it. And
not always. We've had a couple of years ago. We had a freeze in April
that struck like one of our favorite varieties of customers.
And we lost a third of that crop.
It was a low spot in the field that I think it just didn't get the air movement during the freeze. Yeah. And
that there's pollination. People hear about bees and all that stuff, and they think, you hope with blueberries, there's always hope.
Yeah. Well, even if it's a small crop, I still have to do the legwork to get them picked, sell them, bring customers. And we've had some neat experiences with people helping us along the way. I think about when Tristan Klesick did a promotion with us. Way back when we just had a little trickling of customers coming to pick, and he came alongside because we had sold blueberries to him, and he said, "Hey, would it help if I let my customers know that on this particular week, Classic customers get a little % off at Hazel Blue Acres?" And we said, "Sure." And wow, they came.
Nice.
And it was another big learning curve, like, wow, okay, what do we do when people come?
Yeah.
So, and we're thankful for just neat ideas, people like that, like Tristan, that took us to a different level. And then building upon that. But like I said, no matter what size crop you have, there are things to do. They've got to be picked. I hire kids. I have to figure out how to sell them, packaging.
She's the HR department, the marketing department, the accounting department.
All wrapped up in one.
Yes.
And that's been an interesting saga just over the years and I usually find that when we need some sort of person for a job, we have been able to find the right person. I'm thankful for that. I'm learning how to how to manage youth, because we can hire kids as young as 12.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of people, that's their first job.
Yeah.
And I haven't had to do very much advertising at all for that over the years, because people share with others that there's a need, and let people know that there's a job for teenagers out there.
Yeah.
And so we've got a great right-hand person named Jordy that helps us with all kinds of computer things. And so it's nice over the years, as this huge learning curve that continues and I'm sure will never end,
Yep.
that somehow we get matched up with the right people so often, and I'm thankful for that.
Yeah. So I always like to ask people, especially if they're working with youth that are, in that first job realm, over the years of owning the farm and bringing on these youth, have you guys seen a difference in the youth, or are kids kind of kids?
Ooh. Well, I mean, there are differences just within a group.
Yeah.
The ones that are really wanting a job, setting a goal, it helps them to work harder if they have a goal. Because over the years, we've had kids that are saving for a car, saving for some electronic something or other.
Yeah.
And you can tell that drives them.
Yeah.
So I like to ask them, what kind of goals do you have? Is there something you want to save for? What do you hope to get out of this job? So I'm not sure if I would say over these years, really, last year was 10 years for us of harvest, that I've seen youth as a whole change. But you're working with a whole bunch of different personalities.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting and kind of fun to see how to give them incentives to help me harvest my crop.
Yeah.
And I tell them that this is that I really rely on them.
Yeah.
It's a very important job.
Yeah.
And so it is not for everyone.
Yeah.
And it's nice when they realize it themselves before I have to say, oh golly, this isn't working out, So,
Yeah.
and it doesn't matter their age really.
Yeah.
In the span, say we have kids working from 12 to 18 or something. Sometimes the 12-year-old is going to be fabulous.
Yeah.
And maybe an 18-year-old, it's not for them. So,
Right.
There's no doubt that there's for sure a perception that as the generational changes, the millennials, the feelings of entitlement and all of those things that you read about and do exist, but kids are still kids.
Yeah.
And it's funny how even within sibling groups, brothers and sisters,
yes.
you can still see that kids are kids, because just because one sibling is a good worker, blueberry picker, and all of that,
or retail,
there
or
is
whatever.
and same parent, same thing. There's no guarantee that their sibling, their brother or sister, will be or won't be or may be better.
Yeah.
So there's that. There is a certain amount of benefit that everyone gets when the 12-year-olds that come and pick. They learn, even if it's not their thing, picking blueberries. It's good that they stick with it, and some of them, and the parents realize that. So it's one of those hard to quantify things of how much benefit they get. And it's really great to see the ones that do thrive at it. But our own kids don't like to pick blueberries that much. And we can see in them their differences, and one that is great at the retail aspect of it and interacting with customers, and one that has no desire to interact with customers, and then the other one that just wants to do very, physical labor and drive tractor,
Other
do
farm
that
work.
stuff. So
Yeah.
other things.
And we
So-
need that too, so that's fine.
Yeah, we've got. So actually, it's my twins' birthday today. So the two girls, they were oldest, and drastically different.
Yeah.
So you just see that in the way they interact and think, and that's.
Yeah.
I think the reason I asked that question is because of that. There is that perception that kids, they don't know how to work today, and you hear I talk to business owners and parents, and they'll kind of spit that out, kids don't know how to work these days. I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, we've been able to find some great kids that do a
Yeah.
fantastic job.
Yes, I
And
agree.
it may be true that there are less,
Yeah.
but there are still really good ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't totally discount them.
And
Karen and I oftentimes when our kids were little and we had, when they were babies and you see their personalities develop right away, and we often we over and over comment, why did we assume that our kids would be, the second and the third one would be just like the first one when, we were so much different than our own siblings. But it's just
Right.
like you think, hey, this one, he likes this. Why won't this child do this?
Oh my goodness. Well, I do want to say too that I hope on the farm, because I get inspired if I see little things like someone drives up on the first day and I can see them out there, their parents taking their picture on their first day of their first job.
Yeah.
And I just hope that we're doing a service by giving them that experience.
Yeah.
And we do see, I get calls because it's seasonal work, we don't always keep folks forever.
Yeah.
There are people that have to have a job in the off season, and then that
Yeah.
continues into the summer. But I hope that they've gotten a good training that serves them well in their future jobs. And we get calls for references, and it's kind of cool. You think, wow, they worked here that long ago, and they're they're doing this, and you see successes in their professions, and it's kind of a neat thing about it. And I have to remember those fun things if it's a day that I'm especially frustrated with what's going on.
Yeah, well, and I think, even when I was growing up, when we were in college, Brittany was working at the bookie, which was like the college bookstore, on campus and in the cafeteria. Many of her coworkers that she worked with, which were like 18 to 20, 22, many of them, that was their first job. And it's just like, with things, we just need to get people out. We need to get kids out into the work world sooner so they can start learning these skills, whether it's retail or finding out retail's not for them.
Right.
Or finding out, you just don't know if you don't.
Experiences.
Yeah, if you don't get those experiences.
Yeah, it's probably there's that whole law of unintended consequences that child labor laws and things that were meant to protect kids are really good.
Yeah.
But maybe it's not been the best thing, limiting their opportunities to work at a young age when you can learn.
Yes.
I mean, and we've seen that where, an 18-year-old comes and it's his first job and he's, maybe it's too late to teach a work
say
ethic.
that.
No, maybe that, but possibly that was their personality all along anyways. And
Yeah.
so, I do remember reading, there was a magazine called Horde's Dairyman that was published in Wisconsin, and it was all about dairy farming and stuff.
It still
And there
exists.
It does. It might. Yes,
It
probably
does.
does.
It does.
See, I'm a little out of touch with the dairy
He said
industry now.
was.
I read an article a lot of years ago about that this mom wrote about having to work so hard to get her kids to go out and clean stalls and feed calves and milk the cows and feed the cows and do that, and and I remember being, I don't know, if having a certain amount of resistance that I had as a child when I was forced to go and work, and and the gist of the article was that not everyone is born with a really good work ethic.
Yeah.
Most of us have to learn it. There are people who I think just are born that way, and that's how they're wired, and they can't sit still, and maybe that's too much the wrong way, but most of us need to learn a work ethic at some point in our life, and it is probably like maybe it's like languages. The younger you learn it, the easier it is to learn.
Yeah, well, and I think what you're saying too, I think there's also some of the people that have that like really intense work ethic from a very young age. Sometimes it's also like whether it's escaping or fear type thing, where it's like they're trying to get away from poverty or whatever it might be. Because I do know a lot of, again, in like reading business books, like a lot of these super successful people, came from nothing, and it was almost like they were running from that. They were like, I don't want to go back to that, so I'm going to keep moving this way. But, everyone kind of has their own different motivators of what kind of brings them along.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
And we see growth all the time, from the beginning of the season to the end. With some people take to it right away, but others it just takes a little more time. So
Yep. And it's great when you see that.
And that's that light bulb moment that when you get it and you see that, and I mean, you're picking blueberries, and there's a minimum wage but they also get paid by the pound, and so if you fill your bucket faster and empty it, and don't stand and talk for a little bit, and then and it's
your paycheck
great
will
to
be bigger.
see that all of a sudden at the end of the day, you picked X amount of pounds, and that correlates to, wow, if I don't talk and I don't just lollygag around, and if I hustle, that hustle gets you more money.
Yeah.
So there's a direct correlation there.
Yeah.
And some people get that sooner than others, and we just hope that everyone eventually gets it.
Yeah. Well, and I love that. I wish more jobs were set up to be able to do that. Like, I'm always trying to think of ways to do that with retail and things that we're doing that somehow tying that paycheck back to what you're doing and how well you're doing. And I love that in like farming, that you can, that you guys are able to tie that together so simply, so that like people start learning that part of that lesson early on. Because I think it's really important. So, all right. Well, another thing is, I was looking at your guys' websites and stuff and doing research for this, and I came across some of the recipe things that you guys were doing. And I don't know how recent this one was, but I found the one you guys did of the blueberry chicken wings, and it made me hungry just watching it. But where do you guys come up with the recipes and stuff like that?
That was just this month. That was my April cooking demo. It's on the second Tuesday of every month.
Okay.
And we get to do them in person again now.
Nice.
We started doing them online when COVID started. But in a way, that made it so that we could reach more folks with the demos because they were online. We have them on our website and on Facebook. But I have customers send me ideas. I do love cooking, so I'm always looking through magazines and the newspaper. He shows me articles in the newspaper, with recipes quite often. So that's sort of an ongoing quest for me.
Okay.
But we have products to be inspired by, because I use either blueberries or sockeye salmon or hazelnuts. I've done something with eggs too, because we sell farm fresh eggs. I did a angel food cake, which is a treasured family recipe on the Fuentas side.
Nice.
And so I get them from a lot of different resources. I sort of collect cookbooks, and so I'm always trying recipes. And just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's a good recipe.
Well, it's that, and then the thing, because my wife and I have talked about this, like, a lot of times you'll end up getting the recipe, or a lot of times recipes will come from the internet, like, in the end. But what's difficult is it's really hard to decide what you're going to, like, if you're meal planning or something. Like, cookbooks are so much more helpful in the sense that you're just looking, this recipe, no, that doesn't sound great. Oh, this one looks easy, let's do this. And even if, like, the day of, you're like, oh, I'm just going to Google it because that's easier. Like, if you didn't have the cookbook, you wouldn't have been able to meal plan that thing. So even though we have access to it through the internet, a lot of times cookbooks are better because then you're able to actually, like, just rapid fire. Instead of, like, Googling, like, this meal plan. No, let's try a different one. Let's try this one. So.
Yeah. And hopefully the cookbook, all those recipes have been vetted a little more thoroughly and know that they do work.
Yeah.
Because I am getting an eye for glancing at recipes and saying, I don't think that'll work, or something that will work for your own use might not work for a demonstration.
Yeah.
Because I have to think about the timing and the tools and how to have something to present in the end for everyone. So, and sometimes recipes are very strange.
Yeah.
Weird ingredient order that doesn't match with how you do things. So I've had quite a bit of practice, because I think I started doing the demos in late fall 2017.
Okay.
And it's a great way to bring people to the farm. We have a fun time usually.
Yeah.
And hopefully, maybe someday, I'll be able to put them together into a cookbook of some sort.
That'd be great.
A lot of people ask about that, but they're all there on the website.
Nice. So then, what are some of the weirdest recipes you've tried with blueberries?
I did find one time that I believe came out of the Costco magazine that was blueberry chili.
Okay.
It was delicious.
Okay.
You couldn't very clearly taste the blueberries, but I'm sure they made it more healthy.
Yes.
It was good, but it was kind of funny. It was like blueberry chili. So
Yeah. Very cool. And I think the thing with blueberries is they add like a sweetness to it, but they're and they are strong, but like the flavor blends well. It surprisingly, like even looking at that video of you doing the chicken wings,
Yes.
and it had spice, chili, I think powder or something spicy.
it had
in right?
several spices.
Yeah.
Yes. And I did talk about in the demo how you could do some of those things ahead, because sometimes a person is daunted by a longer recipe.
Yep.
But when it's worth it, like that was a very good flavored sauce,
Oh,
barbecue
that's so
sauce.
good.
And so I shared in the video that you could do this portion if you're going to have a party or something. Do this portion a couple days ahead, do this one a day ahead, and then you just put it all together in the end. I want them to be user-friendly, practical recipes.
Yeah.
So sometimes I will discount a recipe just because I know, no, this is not user-friendly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we sample all of them, sometimes multiple times.
Yeah. Yes. I've put a
That's
few
one of
pounds
those
on my
things that's
family with these
it's
demos.
a blessing and a curse at the same time.
And they are very brutally honest. They're like I tried a bar recipe this week that we're eating it, of course, but they're like, well, not so much. It's
Yeah.
not like, yes. You know,
Yeah.
I want them to be, yes, this is
Yeah.
delicious and this is user friendly, and so I do try them out a lot of times. We've had a
Yeah.
few recipe contests over the years.
Okay.
And they're not all complicated recipes. There are some that are very simple. I mean,
Yes.
we've had some blueberry salad things that.
Yeah, excellent. Like I did Summer of Salads a couple of summers ago. And each year now, for 3 years, I've had a recipe of the year.
Okay.
And I make it on a nice recipe card. I get it printed and everything to give out. So I've done blueberry salsa. I had a fabulous blueberry coffee cake.
Okay.
And then this last year it was a summer fruit galette. And I'm still working on my one for this summer. So I'll be releasing that, usually in June or at the kickoff of the season.
Okay.
And trying to give that out to all customers. And it's fun to give with gifts and things too.
Yeah.
But, yeah, right. It's just an ongoing, always looking for a good recipe.
Nice. Very cool. Now I'm getting hungry. So.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I also wanted to jump in. Every business, every farm, and the way you guys do things, you guys put so much thought into why and how you do things. So, what are some of the things that makes Hazel Blue Acres a unique farm?
Well, I think one of the things, and maybe it would be bragging for him to say growing up there, but no, it's a gorgeous place. It is a beautiful spot to come
Yeah.
and pick. We're right on the river, and people enjoy it so much. Like we spoke about COVID before, it was a wonderful place for people to come and be outside, and
Yeah.
for kids to run, and for people just to enjoy a beautiful place when maybe people were feeling a little cooped up.
Yeah, just a little.
Yeah.
And it's a nice spot. As far as uniqueness, every farm is unique in its own way. But the special things, we are very close to the freeway, so it's, access is pretty easy. We're at the end of a dead-end road, so the first time people come there, they say it seems like a long ways back there.
Yep.
I mean, we're 5 minutes off of I-5, so it's not very far.
Yep.
But there's a little bit of a windiness to it, and then you get there, and so you can be there quickly. We have people that come from, south of Seattle, a lot from, Seattle north, and Camano Island people come out there, and
Yeah.
so once you arrive there, it's quiet and peaceful. I mean, the river surrounds it, and there's just a little nice, beautiful, magical quality to it. So.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, I have an overwhelming feeling of, I don't know if you want to say, just being honored that people take the time to drive all that way and come to our farm.
Yeah.
Because some people do come from a long way, and I'm open in the off season on Tuesdays and Saturdays. People will make a trip to get eggs or to get, their blueberries there. They take the time, and I really appreciate that. Sometimes I just feel overwhelmed by, wow, they came all the way out here, and I'm so thankful.
Yeah.
I mean, I do brag occasionally that our blueberries are the best that you will ever taste. I mean, and maybe it's it's a combination of the soil and, we take really good care of our blueberry plants, and we're grown organically, and they have been since they were planted. They will be some of the best blueberries you've ever eaten, if not the best.
Very cool.
We've
So
got
that's
3
a
varieties.
unique quality.
Okay.
Yeah, we do.
All very different.
Okay.
From, the beginning of the season, it's what we call our sweet tart variety of Rika.
Okay.
And they're in bloom right now. And then Draper in the middle. And they tend to be larger, although last summer all the berries were good sized. And they're all sweet. A lot of people love that because you can fill up your bucket really fast with those Drapers. And they're very popular. And then Liberty is the final one. And we pick Liberties into September.
Okay.
And some people think that when summer's over, blueberries are over. But we have that nice late season. That's his favorite variety, that last one. It is beautiful and delicious.
Nice. Very cool. So, kind of looking ahead then, you guys have obviously come a very long way to get to where you are with the farm. What do you guys kind of see as the future of Hazel Blue Acres?
That's a very good question.
Well, I know one thing for sure. It'll keep evolving and changing things over the years, even down to what products we offer and partnerships we have. It has evolved. Like Lopez Island Creamery buys blueberries from us, buys hazelnuts. They make our ice cream that we sell.
Yes.
The last summer we just started a partnership with Wild Crow Organic Pie Company. They make pies for us now. They buy berries from us, and we buy the pies back. We are just always kind of looking for the next opportunity, and it's just evolved over time. Do you have any thoughts on that, dear?
Yeah, I mean, when you say future, do you mean next year, 5 years, 10 years, 25 years? I mean, there's one thing I can say is the blueberry plants, can produce for, up to 75 years. Wow. I mean, so they're a long-lived plant. The hazelnuts are a 35-year kind of lifespan, and a little bit longer potentially.
Okay. They will outlive us.
So yeah, so there's a legacy there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that will be. They're hitting their stride now, and they will continue to produce well as long as someone cares for them. I mean, I hope that there will always be someone that wants to care for them. That's there's a whole lot of benefits to perennial plants and those kind of plantings of things that environmentally, the good for the soil. I mean, they're retaining carbon and all of those things. So I hope that I would, when you say long-term future, I would hope that one of our children wants to continue the work and that we are doing all the right things to set it up so that it's a viable entity to carry on.
Yeah.
And that's, there's a lot of work that we've put in, and the things that we have done may be different than, our children or somebody else that takes it over would, maybe they decide to market things in a different way or do things And who's to say that they could very well do it better than we do?
Yeah.
There's lots of opportunity there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, and I think, especially I think there's been a lot in the news and stuff of like food shortages, things like that. Like the more farmers, the more people like you guys that start with no farm and then create a farm out of really nothing is really, really important that we get more people that are interested and passionate about farming. And so I really appreciate you guys of what you guys have done. It's really neat to hear all that you guys have done and where you guys are at. And I'm looking forward to see what you guys do in the future too.
Thank you.
So, I like to end every podcast with some rapid fire questions. Don't roll your eyes.
They can't see that.
So the first one is, what purchase of $100 or less have you enjoyed the most in the last 3 months?
Do you have one, dear? I know. I appreciate the new cover I got for my Pampered Chef food chopper.
Nice.
I wore it out. So I needed a new one.
I was trying to think if it costs. I don't think it was less than $100.
It could be
Around $100.
Sure.
I mean, really, a really simple one that, I do a lot of stuff around the farm, working on stuff, building stuff, and I've come to really appreciate and love my cordless DeWalt tools. And I finally broke down and got a DeWalt cordless skill saw. And man, it's nice to not have to find the extension cord, stretch it out, and have a long cord you're dragging around. There are some tools that are really, really worthwhile having.
Yeah.
I like the cooking tools. He likes the building tools.
Yes. Was it Tim the Tool Man that said there's no such thing as a tool you never need or don't need?
All right. Who is the most influential person outside of your family in your life?
It would be kind of funny, and I'd be embarrassed to tell him ever. But I mean, I had a lot of people, a lot of people that were teachers and stuff that I would consider. I mean, a couple that I remember, but when I was telling my story of going to college and then all of a sudden switching gears and becoming a commercial fisherman, and that friend of my brother's that suggested I get a job on a fishing boat. I mean, that tiny little suggestion there, seemingly innocuous, had a pretty large impact on my life these last 37 years or whatever it's been.
That's awesome.
I think of a person, her name is Arlie, and she is someone that I met in college at Lutheran Bible Institute, and she is just a fabulous listener and is so insightful. Mm-hmm. And so often when I need someone to bounce something off of, I'll call her, or I think right away to call her.
Yeah.
So definitely Arlie.
That's awesome. All right. This is a fill in the blank question. So it is, I know this is weird, but I've always wanted to blank.
I would like to compete in the luge competition in the Olympics.
Okay.
That's so weird. That would be fun. And when I was harvesting brine shrimp on the Great Salt Lake, is it Park City? There's a luge course there, and I almost went there to go. I didn't know that you wanted to ride in the luge.
Oh, I've always thought that would be just the coolest thing. Probably break my neck.
I missed the opportunity there to go do that, and I don't know. I guess I would consider myself pretty fortunate in a lot of the things that I've wanted to do. I've done, and maybe I don't have any crazy wants, but I get to be a commercial fisherman in Alaska, and I get to be a farmer, and I love them both. And
that's awesome.
So,
and he gets to live with me
Yeah, that too.
The best part, right? All right. Who's an interesting or fascinating person that I should interview next?
Have you ever interviewed Jessica Frank from Copper House in Stanwood?
No.
She's got a little small business there. She is a real go-getter, kind, creative person. I think you'd have a lot of fun interviewing her.
She's one of those people whose timing was completely wrong in that I think she started it in like January of 2020.
Okay.
Her new business.
Her new business,
Perfect
and
timing.
you know,
But she
I mean,
is just-
and I think most people would have given up,
Yeah.
and she didn't.
She's tenacious.
persevered.
You'd
So
have fun
it's-
with her. We met her
yeah.
through the farm.
I mean,
Okay.
she's had a lot. I mean, it's been a struggle. I mean,
Yeah.
if you can, you know, the whole pandemic thing
Yeah.
for those certain businesses,
Yeah.
and without any help like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. And lastly, what piece of advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
You mean like what stock to buy?
It could be that as well.
Microsoft, by you know.
I think we both would agree it would have to do with investments. You know, being daring, maybe. And if it wasn't something that he probably would have been more ready to do that as a 20-year-old, maybe, than I would. But yeah, find someone that knows a little something about that and go for it.
Yeah.
Even if it's
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah.
Get it going.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you for having us. I hope you'll come see us at the farm.
Yeah, I'd love to. Come bring the kids and everything.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. All right. Well,
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks for joining me. And Islanders, I will talk to you on the next one. Well, a big thank you to Karen and Spencer Fuentas for joining me on the podcast today, and thank you for listening. If you haven't already, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us be found by other Islanders like yourself. And be sure to follow me on the Insta. Follow at the Camano Voice on the Instagram. And I'm going to be doing my 4-week challenge, 3 posts a week. See how that goes. So be sure to do that. All right. For anything else in this episode, you can go to CamanoCommons.com/podcast. That's CamanoCommons.com/podcast. Thanks for listening and see you next time.